My team is relatively small, but everybody at the airport is invested in sustainability. And so it's not just myself and my team working on it. We partner, again, stakeholder engagement. We partner internally with everyone. Everyone has some piece of sustainability that we're either providing them resources and information on how to do, or we are doing and handing off to them. And it's just a group effort. And then when we get to our external stakeholders like the airlines, who have their own goals, again, looking for opportunities to work together to amplify our efforts. So the future of sustainability here is very bright as I see it.
Welcome, everyone. We're back with an episode of AEC Perspectives. And today I'm very excited to bring you some guests and the topic of sustainability. We're going to dig into this. And first and foremost, let's introduce our speakers for today, our guests on the pod. First off, I want to introduce the Associate Vice President at RS&H. Ben Moore is here on the podcast with us. Ben, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you with us today.
So happy to be here.
Excellent. And our other guest is Dr. Quinta Warren, who is the Senior Director of Sustainability for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Some of you may have heard of this facility and visited it, but we are happy to welcome Quinta to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Ben, we're going to start with you. Can you tell us just a little bit more about yourself, your role at RS&H? What does that all entail? What should we know about you today?
Sure, Rachel. So at RS&H, I lead Sustainability Resilience Consulting, and I've been working at RS&H for over 15 years, focusing that whole time on helping clients move through the challenges and seizing the opportunities related to how to become energy efficient, save water, reduce waste, reduce emissions, protect themselves against the shocks and stressors of a changing climate, and so on. And I've had the great pleasure of being able to work with Quinta Warren on these kinds of things at ATL.
Excellent. Obviously, then we have the perfect person from RS&H here on the podcast with us for this topic. Quinta, I'm going to head over to you. Same question I posed to Ben. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role at ATL, Atlanta International Airport, and what your role entails there and what you're bringing today?
Yeah, so I lead sustainability for the busiest airport in the world. And that means that, I help to set the sustainability goals across the airport and help to make sure that we are actually making progress towards, accomplishing those goals. I work with stakeholders across the airport, both internally and externally, to make sure that we are all in sync as we work towards our collective or individual sustainability goals, really providing resources, information, and so on. But the idea is to make sure that Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport is as known for sustainability as it is known for being the busiest airport in the world.
Well, and I got to be honest, I'm definitely familiar with the airport, and I'm trying to imagine anyone on the podcast or listening to it who might not be. But I would say that probably when I think about it, the sustainability might not be something that would pop into my brain first, but I think we're here to change that today. So we do want to dig into this whole topic of sustainability. So Quinta, I'm actually going to bring this first question to you, and you just mentioned it. Sustainability is a huge focus at the airport, and we're going to learn about why that is. Can you give us an overview? Why is it such a high stakes and impactful area for sustainability?
Well, again, we're the busiest airport in the world, busiest and most efficient. But in terms of being busy, we move hundreds of thousands of people through this airport every single day. Last year, we had 108.1 million people fly through this airport.
Wow.
Which is not a trivial amount. So that's passengers. We are also the largest employer in the state. So we have about 63,000 people working here at the airport. All of this to say that there are so many people coming through here that there's a huge opportunity to impact people when it comes to sustainability. That I think is the biggest and most important reason why Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson takes sustainability so seriously, because we are impacting this region and all of the people come through here in various ways. And we know that we can do the same with sustainability.
Well, yeah, you just think about the sheer number of people's lives it touches from a direct, contact with the airport, whether they're working there or passing through there and having to weave that all in. Ben, I want to over to you. I mean, you think about the magnitude of this facility's not only footprint, its impact on as an employer, as well as servicing people who are traveling. From your perspective with RS&H, how meaningful is it to have sustainability focused here at this kind of facility for airline industry?
Well, it's vitally important. And I think Quinta's answer really underscores an important point that I want to make, and that is that sustainability is sometimes misunderstood. What it is, it's an optimization of environmental, social, and economic factors that ensure that an enterprise infrastructure is going to be there for the long haul. And you heard Quinta say, first and foremost, that this airport's about, connecting people, bringing people from point A to point B in a very efficient way. And that's that social dimension. It's also a huge employer, the number one employer in the state. And that those people's livelihoods and their income and their ability to provide for their children is directly influenced by that airport. Again, a social sustainability and an economic sustainability driver. And then we get to this thing that people, I think, most think about when they consider sustainability, and that's environmental impact. But it's not more important than the other two factors. And so we think about how much energy that airport's using, how much waste it produces, how much water it's consuming, how much emissions it might produce. And that's certainly something that Quinta's working on. I'm helping Quinta work with. And when you combine that with that social and that economic element, then you can see that sustainability at a place like Hartsfield-Jackson really has the opportunity to have repercussions and make waves throughout not just Georgia, but the entire United States and the world.
Right. You have such that visibility there. So obviously, yes, all eyes can be over at Atlanta International Airport because it's, got the magnitude of the impact on everyone we just talked about. And Ben, you just listed off several aspects to sustainability and a lot going on there. Let's be honest. So a lot of things to tackle, a lot of aspects of the human interaction and human sensibilities around sustainability when it comes to traveling in and out of airport, working at the airport. Quinta, would love to know, that seems like a very tall order to be confronting and solving sustainability from your role. What are some of the biggest sustainability challenges that you think are unique to an airport of this scale?
Yeah, I want to start out by saying huge challenge, but we're up for the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a number of sustainability goals and initiatives, as you can imagine, but I want to list off some of the highest level ones. So we have a net zero by 2050. So reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. And we also have a 100% clean and renewable energy by 2035 goal. And then we're also aiming to divert 90% of all the waste generated here from landfills by 2035.
Wow.
High level. I think we've already kind of gone over what some of the challenges are, which is we have a lot of people, right? So if I say we were looking to divert waste from landfills, we're looking at 300,000 people generating that waste every day. And that's just passengers, right? So we have a lot of waste to deal with. So we're dealing with a lot of people. We're dealing with a lot of stakeholders here at the airport. So we have ourselves, the Department of Aviation, which is, a part of the city of Atlanta, but we also have all the airlines. We have concessionaires. We have various contractors doing various things around the airport. Ensuring that we have things in place that will get us towards our goals requires a lot of stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure to do because we get to know the people that we work with very well. But, we have to make sure that we are aligning our goals. We have to make sure that the timelines are somewhat related so that as we're moving things forward, we're enabling our stakeholders as well to work towards their goals. That's one big challenge. Yeah. Another is, things cost money. If I had all the money in the world, there are a number of things I would do today. So we have to think very carefully about how we spend money in our quest to achieve our goals. And so we go after various sources of funding. We have money ourselves that we generate being in an airport. We work with our partners to do this, but because we don't have all of the money that we need today, we try to be judicious about the things that we roll out. We prioritize, we work with stakeholders. Sometimes they will pay for things, but I would say those are probably the two biggest challenges, just the sheer number of people and stakeholders, and then how do we actually pay for things?
I can imagine. And I checked my watch when you said the goals there too. I was like, well, that's in like 10 years. That's really quick. So, but as you mentioned, you're up to the challenge. And I feel very confident in that, hearing you talk about it. Ben, you just mentioned something that I hadn't thought about as far as like sustainability, but the social aspect. We talk about environment and everything like that, but obviously the social. Quinta, I want to take this back over to you. What's your perspective on that, on how social figures into the whole effort for sustainability at the airport?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do echo Ben's sentiments that when you're doing sustainability, you need to balance all three pillars. And with the social pillar, I think it's a little difficult sometimes for organizations to do, but I'm very proud to say that's something that Atlanta does really well. We have such a huge number of social and community engagement that happens. I'm very proud of it. So, we have workforce development programs, we have career fairs, we have internships that we do for high school students and college students. We have apprenticeship programs. I mean, the list goes on. We have a river that starts here at the airport, the Flint. And twice a year, we gather volunteers and we go in and we pull trash out of the river, hundreds of pounds each time. So, yeah, I think we're doing a really good job in ensuring that we are positively impacting the communities around us. One more example is our, I guess you call it a noise insulation program, right? So the communities that live around here that had to deal with planes flying over their houses. And we have a program where we go in and we help to mitigate that. So we will retrofit their houses with windows and or walls that are soundproof. And we will also go in and make sure that their HVAC systems are updated so they can keep those windows and doors closed and still be comfortable. And we do that at our own cost. And This is a program we do every year and have done for several decades now. So yeah, Atlanta does a great job with the social aspect.
Well, Ben, I want to bring this back over to you as well, because as Quinta just mentioned, got two major challenges there: stakeholders, as well as, somebody's got to pay for all this. Very worthwhile goals to have around sustainability and all the aspects we talked about, but it takes doing. It takes people to believe in it and people to invest in it. What's your perspective from that, from RS&H side of, importance of sustainability versus what it actually takes to get there?
Right. And, I'm a consultant, and so my job is to help Quinta solve these challenges. And so I like to think of a challenge as just an opportunity that's upside down. We flip it over and you think about the immense opportunity that Atlanta has with such diverse and fantastic stakeholders. And the way that it's structured in Atlanta, as Quinta alluded to, you really have to start and end with them. Other places, you might be able to do a little bit of work on your own before you bring it to the stakeholders. And that works okay. It's certainly seemingly easier from a certain perspective. But when you bring them in at the beginning, you bring them along the whole way, and you have them in at the end, what you're able to do is you're able to leverage all the great things that they're doing and find those synergies and build upon each other's energy and resources. Because ultimately, sustainability, resilience, these are not things that can succeed in a vacuum. They always require a village. And because Atlanta is a village, yes, it requires a little bit more effort, but they're further ahead from the beginning. And so I think that's one of the strengths of the situation in Atlanta. There's such strong stakeholders. When it comes to funding, I'd say that, funding accrues to those who are prepared. So, Quinta, where are we with grants at this moment? I mean, we just had tremendous success over the past several months, racking up millions of dollars of grants, right?
Yeah, approximately $18 million that we're hoping will all come through. Yes.
Right. So that happens because Atlanta is prepared and has done a lot of the groundwork on sustainability and is able to articulate its vision in its past and its present to these funders because it's done some of that preliminary work. And then those funders want to fund, projects that they think are going to move forward and succeed and become replicable. So that's why, having a sustainability program and investing in these studies and doing this preliminary work is worth it. That's what the ROI is. It just provides you more and more opportunities for funding. And as Atlanta moves forward, those opportunities just expand because the funding goes to those who are prepared and who are successful.
That's great. And that's great input too, and great advice too for people to think about. Like if they can look at it sustainability, look at the example of Atlanta International Airport and say, yes, we want to go for that, or maybe they're daunted by it. But just realizing, as you said, if you have all that preparedness there and you really set those expectations and you have people who are personally invested in it from day one and make it very clear what that expectation is, you're going to set yourself up for success. I want to ask about what seems like a very successful effort. Quinta, apparently the airport has been producing environmental social governance report, ESG, for anyone who likes the acronym, for 3 years now. I'd love to learn what kind of impact that has had, because that seems like, just like this podcast, a great resource for anyone outside of the situation to understand what's been going on and what the impact has been. Tell us a little bit more about this report.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite projects here at the airport, and definitely want to give kudos to Ben and his team, because they really do help us. Wouldn't be able to do it as well if they weren't on board. But yeah, the ESG report is sort of like a yearbook for the airport. So we report across environmental, social, and governance activities that take place across the airport. We're working on the 4th year one now for 2024. And starting out, we've been focusing on the efforts that Atlanta Airport is, so the Department of Aviation, that part of the city of Atlanta is doing. But starting this year, we're trying to say more in the report about what our stakeholders around the airport are also doing along these lines that are feeding into our goals. It's a fantastic report, and it's publicly available. So as soon as we're done, we post it on our website, and anyone can go in and read about what we're doing in all of these areas. One of the things that I love most about this report is that we use it as an airport to raise green bonds. So everything that goes into the report is verified by an independent third party. Right. And that gives investors confidence about the things that we're seeing that we're doing, the sustainable projects that we see that we're doing. And over the last 2 years, we've been able to raise $750 million in green bonds. And that has gone towards our $7 billion capital project. So we have a lot of new buildings going up around the airport, and some of this money is going towards some of the projects that we think are particularly green. And investors are happy so far, and we continue to go after more money.
Well, that sounds like a whopping success all the way around. Not just for the report itself, for actually kind of showing the receipts of all the work and effort and the results being achieved, but also, as you mentioned, for investors to feel confident about getting involved. Ben, Quinta mentioned that this was very crucial for RS&H and yourself to be involved with and support. Tell me about why this is important for this report to exist. Why is it making such a big impact to the airport itself, and hopefully maybe replicating these efforts across other industries and facilities?
Well, again, I think Quinta expressed it best. Sustainability, a lot of people say, okay, that's about being green. And in this case, it absolutely is in terms of money, right? Like, this is enabling Atlanta to finance its future. It's part of the puzzle, right? So it's vitally important. But going back to some other things that Quinta brought up, it definitely leverages and is possible because of the stakeholder relationships that have been forged. So creating an ESG report really requires reaching out to all the different folks that make this airport tick and really understanding their story and telling their story consistently year after year, and then developing as a part of that a database and a trend line that shows anybody who's interested, and funders are interested, Wall Street's interested, where this airport's been and where it's going. And so there's no doubt that the future's bright at Atlanta, and it's worth investing in, either as someone who wants to, allocate their capital and get a return on it, or maybe they want to have a job at this airport, right? Yeah. Or maybe they want to understand what it really means to be traveling to this airport and how this airport fits into this bigger picture of the ability to connect oneself to Atlanta, to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point there too. I mean, Quinta, you mentioned that the airport is a huge employer for the state, and we know a lot of people out there, particularly younger generations, but it's also going cross-generational, where some of the things they're looking at for prospective employer is like, what's your philosophy on the environment? What are you trying to do to make sure that we're all still around and, we're being responsible, accountable, et cetera. And I mean, that's just one aspect too of like what the benefit of this report is. So it sounds like it's got many touch points, not only for Atlanta International Airport, but also anytime a an entity or facility is saying, hey, we are making all these strides. Let's create this report to showcase it all. And there's many benefits to that. So really interesting. We are going to have to take a look at that report. And like you said, working on year 4 to kind of watch that through line is going to be super interesting to follow those stories. And I like that you mentioned too, Ben, this is about stories. It's not just about facts. It really is tying people in to make it feel more personal. And there's some aspect to it that's like, there's a human side to it, right? Very cool.
Oh, there absolutely is. I mean, I think that's half the story of an ESG report, right?
Yeah.
Is how this airport really is at the center of what makes Atlanta what it is, right? And if the way you want to experience that and understand that is to read about the stories, you can do that. If the way you want to understand that is to crunch the data and have the numbers and look at how it's changing from year to year, you can do that. And the ESG report provides both windows onto the little world that is Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport.
Well, and Quinta, just back over to you on that point too, because I know you mentioned this is one of your favorite aspects of working on sustainability there. I can see why. It seems very meaningful on all fronts.
Very meaningful, but I also really enjoy the fact that you have to go to all of these stakeholders and engage with them, right? So it's really taught me a lot about how the airport works, right? I'm not on our compliance team or enforcement or our parking and ground transportation. I'm not managing our utilities. But I know about everything that's happening there because at least once a year, sometimes more, but at least once a year, I have to go and engage with people and collect data and ask questions. And it's, why are we doing this? And, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. And, like you said, the data, but also the narratives. Can you tell me how we ended up here? Why is it this way? It's such a fun project.
That sounds really fun. So, Quinta, part of your response earlier something you mentioned is that you've got some new buildings going up around the airport, as part of these efforts. This brings up this next question a bit, I believe. It has a tie-in. One of the major sustainability initiatives worldwide is the electrification of airports. I would love to learn from you. Why is this important? I'm sure it figures into some of these new maybe buildings and efforts going on, but why is it important for airports to have that electrification, and what challenges does this present to you and probably more widely globally to people who are part of the airport?
Yeah, I mean, I can at least talk about why it's important to Atlanta. And we have this net zero goal. It's, I would say, impossible to get to net zero without electrifying a lot of operations at the airport. And so, yeah, that probably tracks with other airports as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have a goal to get to 100% clean and renewable energy by 2035. So that touches on electrification as well. I would guess that most airports don't have that particular goal, but this is a goal that comes down from the city of Atlanta. And again, we're a part of the city, so we are complying with that. Electrification is interesting. Another sort of fun challenge because we get to electrify the buildings. Right, because you're heating using natural gas, maybe you can switch over to electricity. Also has to do with vehicles, right? So we have a fleet of vehicles here at the airport because we need it to move around, to get things done. Most of them are conventional fossil fuel, so it's gasoline or diesel. But we have started buying electric vehicles and testing them out for various purposes to try to understand what our needs are. If they don't meet our needs, is it because it's electric or is it because it's the wrong type of vehicle?
Yeah.
Maybe we need an SUV here or a truck versus a sedan and so on. And then we have ground support equipment. So these are like the tugs and the baggage carriers that the airlines use and things of that nature. And those are usually conventional fossil fuel as well. I'm certainly happy that the airlines here in Atlanta have such strong sustainability goals.
Yeah.
Because a number of them have started switching over to electric ground support equipment. And so we're trying to meet them where they are and making sure we can facilitate that. So it's the range of those things. And then again, we have passengers coming in and they're driving vehicles. Some of them are here to pick people up. They're here for a short time. Some people are here to fly out for the day and come back. Some are parked here for a little while until they return from their trips. But more and more people are driving electric vehicles. And so in our parking decks, we have charging infrastructure. We have a few hundred chargers here at the airport, and we're looking to put more in so that we can facilitate everyone being sustainable.
Wow, that sounds like a mighty undertaking as well. This whole endeavor sounds quite mighty, but you're very poised to be accomplishing it. It seems very responsive too to like what you had mentioned. It's part of what the city wants. It's part of what travelers are wanting in that direction. Ben, would love to get your thoughts on that too. Like, is that what you're seeing kind of more widespread as well? I mean, this is going to be more of a priority, I would imagine, for the airline industry.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, it's a really exciting time to be alive. Maybe 2 or 3 generations ago, your great grandparents, they were using wood and horses to heat and get around, right?
Yeah.
And we lived through this period where fossil fuels had stepped in and really helped us to modernize and improve our quality of life. But this is just what happens with technology and humanity. We find the next thing that takes us on to the next level, and that happens to involve a lot of electrification, whether we're talking about generating power from the sun or the wind, or we're taking our vehicles and we're electrifying them. And it's just a momentous shift in our industrial society and our technology. And we get to be part of that transition every day at a place like Atlanta and all airports really, because airports are really unique in the way that these forces are converging on one location.
Yeah.
Because airports are what connect people to the rest of the world. So it makes sense that in all those connections, there's a shift and this momentous shift in technology and energy. So I can't really think of a dense nucleus focus on electrification than an airport, ranging from the airplanes down to the passenger arriving. And it creates tons of opportunities and challenges for an airport like it, or for any airport, right? So they have to really understand what the implications are for their electrical infrastructure and their power needs, which are going to be immense. And they need to work very closely with their electric utilities so they can be in partnership over the next several years, decades, to be ready for this slowly moving wave of electrification. There's also all these competing interests. Data centers are popping up and using a lot of power too. So airports need to start to think about how they can rely on their own capacity to generate power in conjunction with the utility, and together setting up microgrids and battery backup systems along with the renewable energy to have this very sophisticated ability to control their destiny moving forward. And this requires very careful planning, very careful engineering, and a lot of investment. But again, we talked about that in an airport like Atlanta that's getting prepared, taking the steps can attract that investment, leverage those funds, and take those incremental steps year by year to get ready for this massive transition that's coming to everybody.
Yeah. And you pointed that out really appropriately too, where it's like, this is coming. And it's great that we're able to really take a look at this particular airport, Quinta, through your efforts too, to just say, A, it's doable. It might seem like a really big stretch goals, but they're at least you set the goals. You're doing the work to try to get there. But Ben, to your point, and Quinta has highlighted this in all of your responses, it takes a lot of work. It, like you said, it takes a village. It's great though that we are able to zoom in on this particular microcosm that's happening with Atlanta International Airport. And really, it seems like y'all are really kind of leading the way on this, which I want to ask. We've obviously learned a ton about what's currently in play. What is, 2035, 2050 for, some of these goals that you have. I got to ask, Quinta, what is your vision for sustainability at Atlanta International for the future? Like, where are we at after those goals are achieved and what's next?
Great question. We have so many irons in the fire. I see nothing but growth and positive things in the future. When it comes to electrification, as I said, we've been piloting a number of things and we're starting to roll things out. I didn't yet mention that we have a solar energy program here at the airport as part of the City of Atlanta, but we joined a couple of years ago, and over the next year or so, we have about 17 buildings that we will be putting solar panels on the roof. We've done 2 so far. The third will be energized in the next week or 2, and we've started on the 4th. I mean, it's fantastic because those panels provide about 40% of the energy needs of the buildings. And so we're working towards not just sustainability, but also resilience as we're doing some of these things. And as Ben mentioned, microgrids are a great thing, especially when it comes to resilience and sustainability. And this is kind of what we're working towards with the solar energy program. And we hope to purchase, batteries in the future. We want the airport to have its own microgrid or several microgrids so that if anything happens to the main grid, we can still continue to operate. In terms of waste, our deadline is around the corner, but again, we're doing a lot of things at present that will give us the data and information that we need and the support talking about stakeholder engagement and the support that we need to roll out initiatives so that we are diverting waste from landfills as we would like to. And then we're part of ACA Airport Carbon Accreditation. So this is a carbon management program for airports. We joined in at the base level and we're, looking to move up. And in doing so, we will be moving towards net zero. And so again, we have a number of things that allow us to track our progress towards net zero, test our progress and see if we need to adjust so that we are being more efficient or moving faster or getting more resources. And I feel very lucky to work here at ATL because, my team is relatively small, but everybody at the airport is invested in sustainability. And so it's not just myself and my team working on it. We partner, again, stakeholder engagement. We partner internally with everyone. Everyone has some piece of sustainability that we're either providing them resources and information on how to do, or we are doing and handing off to them. And it's just a group effort. And then when we get to our external stakeholders, like the airlines, who have their own goals, again, looking for opportunities to work together to amplify our efforts. So the future of sustainability here is very bright, as I see it.
Naturally bright. Yeah, it's gonna be wonderful. as sustainably bright as possible. That's right. Ben, what about you? I mean, you've been working with Quinta and her team, been really supporting this as well from the RS&H. What are you hoping to see with all of these developments, the existing goals, as well as what else is on deck?
Well, when I think about my experiences flying through the Atlanta airport and I'm sitting there on the plane, a lot of the airlines like to point out that it's all about the journey, right? They're responsible for making sure that your journey is comfortable. And I think it's the same with sustainability. Sustainability is not really a destination, it's a journey. And that's because, as I said earlier, we're trying to optimize the economy with society and with the environment. And that optimization is constantly in flux, right? And they have to be, you can't go too far into one domain without upsetting that balance. So technology is not going to stop changing, right? In front of us, a huge new domain of big data, leveraging very sophisticated abilities to crunch that data. Some people call it AI, right? That are going to unlock all these ways to automate and derive insight, right? And I know that Atlanta really has a ton of data that it can bring to bear on these sustainability questions. And there will be a time in the near future where it's going to be able to really lean into this data-driven decision-making to make all the right decisions at the right time to support its sustainability efforts and its resilience efforts going forward. And then I think about some of the really exciting technologies that are on the frontier. We talked about microgrids and we talked about solar, and I expect there to be lots of innovation there. But, people are very excited about hydrogen and excited about sustainable aviation fuels. And these are things that will probably play big roles in airports going forward. And there's probably things that I can't even imagine from the energy side that will be important, but are just over the horizon. And then there's going to be a lot of innovation on the economic side, that last domain of sustainability. There's always new ways to figure out how to deliver these expensive projects more efficiently using alternative methods. Atlanta's already using some of those innovative methods to deploy solar. Quinta told you about that. But there will be new ways to do that, and it'll be important for Atlanta to understand all those methods very clearly and make sure that they're serving their needs as much as it's serving the needs of the investors who are ready to, hold hands with Atlanta and help them move forward.
Ben, you just mentioned innovation as being a really key factor for the future of Atlanta and the airport there. But Quinta, would like to hear what your take is. Well, speak about the innovation going on there, because it sounds like it's got to be present in all these developments.
Yeah, I think to do sustainability well, you have to be innovative. And once again, this is something that Atlanta Airport does really well. We're either the leaders when it comes to doing new things, or we're very close to being the first usually. So in terms of sustainability, we're testing out a number of different things. So we have a SAF study, a sustainable aviation fuel study that we have planned, because we're trying to understand how we can bring that fuel here to the airport to help airlines fly on more sustainable fuels. We're looking at how we can bring last mile, they're called eVTOLs, so electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which is like small taxis that are electric and they fly, and they, instead of taking an Uber, you could take an eVTOL. So what are the logistics around that? What infrastructure is needed at the airport? We're looking into that. Hydrogen as well, right? So if a plane is going to fly in hydrogen, how does that actually happen in practice here at the airport? Where do we store the hydrogen? Where does the plane refuel? What does the FAA think about having hydrogen at an airport, and how can we comply with their standards? So those are some examples of how we are trying to be innovative. We love to test things out, pilot things, study things, and we usually want to be the first or close to the first to do innovative things.
Yeah. Well, great points all across the board. I got to say, I think all eyes are on Atlanta International Airport as kind of the pioneer here, and maybe the standard we all need to be trying to work on to achieve. I know I'm going to be now going to look at my city's airport and saying, like, what are y'all doing? But it's good to know that we have a leader in the space to be like, well, let's look at what Atlanta's doing and let's do that as well. And also with RS&H to say, and can we get some help with that, please? And that there's that resource there as well. Let me ask you each this. Where y'all traveling next? Where y'all flying to? Anyone got flight plans in the next year? Where y'all heading? Quinta, and going anywhere special?
I'm hoping to travel to Mongolia this year.
Wow.
It's a place I've been wanting to go for a long time for no particular reason. It just is calling to me. So yeah, that should happen before the end of the year.
Well, I think you should go if it's calling to you for sure. Ben, how about you? Are you traveling or flying? Let's specifically flying anywhere soon?
No shortage of flights for me in my future. As a consultant, that's definitely my office in the sky from time to time. But I'll be in Charleston soon, and then I'll be in Raleigh, and I'll be in St. Louis, and I know I'll be in Atlanta before too long, and I can't wait to see Quinta again when I'm there. So the list will probably grow from there as the year unfolds.
That's awesome. And, hopefully this podcast, as people listen to this episode, particularly whether they're in charge of airports or they're flying through them, we'll have a little bit more of an eye for what's going on around us and where the sustainability is figuring in, and maybe where we should be expecting more of it, especially after what we've heard today. But I want to thank you both so much for some awesome insights into Atlanta International Airport. I'll certainly be thinking about that next time I travel through there because, hey, everyone, if you fly, it's very likely you're going to be going through that airport. But Quinta, thank you so much for your time. And Ben, you as well. This has been an awesome discussion.
Thanks, Rachel.
It's been a pleasure.